also an ICAT canine remedial massage and rehabilitation therapist. I'm an ACE advanced tutor, and I'm also a T-Touch practitioner P2. So this is a little case study on the very delicious Tag, who you can see in the right of your screen. But before I tell you about my involvement with Tag, I just wanted to give you a brief kind of overview on what was going on for Faye, his owner, and Tag before I intervened. So Tag was surrendered to rescue at 4 months old, as he was already displaying some concerning behaviour that the elderly couple who actually had him couldn't cope with. Tag went into foster almost straight away, but that was kind of short-lived because he had started to guard the stairs from the family, and he was starting to display more concerning behaviours, so unfortunately he went back into rescue. The lovely Faye came along, and he actually was then adopted by her at the age of 8 months old. Faye soon realised that life with Tag wasn't going to be the dream that she wanted, but credit to her, she stuck with Tag, and she's actually gone above and beyond what a lot of owners would do, and a lot of owners would have probably surrendered him back to the rescue. So she, you know, I've got a lot of respect for Faye and what she's done and continues to do for Tag, because she's amazing. She wasted no time in finding training classes, and when he was old enough, she enrolled him into agility classes as well, and all kind of trying to focus Tag into literally just train him some like normal obedience and things like that. And she will be the first to admit that she didn't always get things right, but by God, she's got some dedication to this dog, and she's always looking for better ways that she can support him. And she did brilliantly. She got him over car chasing, guarding the stairs, and some other various behaviours as well that he was displaying. However, as Tag hit adolescence, his behaviour started to escalate. He was becoming reactive out on walks. He'd bitten Faye at least twice, and touch of any kind was becoming quite rare. If anyone came near him, especially a stranger, he would start to growl and then bark. He was now resource guarding slippers, and clothing, posts, things like that. Faye couldn't brush or towel dry him at all, and he was starting to display some OCD behaviours, so some repetitive behaviours. So he would start to light chase, shadow chase, repetitive spinning. He was severely noise reactive, so any noise that was heard outside, any noise that came from the neighbours, just post coming through the door, a knock at a door, even a click of a pen, he was starting to react to. Faye's, actually, I should say that Faye's garden doesn't normally look like this. She was actually doing some kind of clearance work in it as a new house, so you will see her house in various stages of decor as we go through. So just to let you know that her house doesn't normally kind of have piles of rubbish in it. So getting back to Tag, yeah, so bin men, so the beeping of the bin lorry, the bins being emptied into the back of the lorry, it was, he was becoming more unmanageable as time went on. Fireworks were a big issue for him, and just general noise, basically. His then dog walker was now also starting to struggle, as outside the home, Tag would just react as soon as he got in the van, or even though he was willing to get in and out. He was chasing shadows whilst he was out, birds, cars, bikes. The wind blowing was a big trigger for him. Any other energetic dog or energetic dogs that came near him, he would start to react, and at his worst he would actually try and redirect on his handler and other dogs out on the walk. There was one or two incidences where the dog walker had to intervene and stop him in order to prevent a fight. So he was now becoming unmanageable for the dog walker, and she's a brilliant local dog walker. and she's also a friend of mine, so she suggested to Faye that we got in touch. But just to show you another one of type of walk that you can have with Tag, as soon as you step out the front door with him, he would always be on high alert, very, very difficult to settle down. I mean, that was just a fly going past him, and basically you could have a whole walk with this type of behaviour. He would constantly pull, and it's not very pleasant at all, quite exhausting, in fact, if you're trying to take your dog out for a walk. So Faye had heard about me anyway through the trainer that she was using for just general obedience with Tag, and she initially got in touch with me to discuss putting Tag into some smaller group walks that I was offering at the time. And I then went and met Tag at the end of February 2018. And after hearing about how he was struggling, it was obvious to me that Tag needed some extra help. I was already a T-Touch practitioner, so I thought one-to-one would be the best way to go. So I started working with Tag twice a week, and we were working with his usual dog walker, so she carried on 3 days a week just to keep up kind of a bit of a regular routine, and just to see if she would spot any changes or notice anything with him going forward. So at that time, ACE free work was actually in its early stages of development, and it's always in development. Sarah Fisher, who developed it, is ever evolving the technique in order to enhance ways of respectfully working with animals. And at the time that I met Tag, I think only a few dogs had experienced it, one of which was obviously Sarah's own dog, Henry. And I certainly didn't know enough at that time to try it myself. So being a T-Touch practitioner, I started sessions, every session with on-lead groundwork. This is my first meeting of Tag, by the way. It's the very first photo I have of him. I have probably about 2,500 photos of Tag. I've probably got more photos of Tag than I have of my own dog. So if anybody wants to see any more of him, of different kind of things, then I can probably find them for you. But this is kind of on-lead groundwork. I don't know if you guys can see it. I've got a rope labyrinth actually laid out on the floor. I've got some cones that he can weave through, but they're quite widely spaced out, and I've got just a few surfaces. And what I was doing was kind of backpack walks with him. So I would stuff as much as I could into a backpack, take him to a quiet location, and then I would do some groundwork with him for about 15 or 20 minutes before then going on for a walk. So my first observations of Tag, right from the very, very start of things, is that he was very uncomfortable with moving. He would pace through walk and trot with noticeable stiffness down his lumbosacral, across his pelvis. Particularly uncomfortable on his right hind, and the left wasn't much better either. He had a fixed right ear, which was also, it was very immovable, and you can see, actually, if I go back, you can see how unlevel they are as well, which is an indication of stiffness down the neck on that side. He was very, very tense down that right side as well. His coat was a big concern for me, and it turned out to be quite an indication of exactly what Tag was going through, and it was changing weekly, sometimes daily. So you can see the crazy coat pattern along his back, and more so onto the right side. When he shook off as well, he could not shake off and remain in the same position that he started. He would actually bunny hop with his back legs and have to move forward. So he was very, very unbalanced. So that kind of explained why he was also pulling out when he was walking. So it's not always about the dog wants to get where they're going, or they're excited for a smell. It can actually be a physical problem that they're also having. So they can be quite unbalanced, and then use the lead or the collar and the harness to actually help to balance them as they walk along. So that was another indication for me that there was something going on with this dog. He was extremely touch sensitive. There was no way I could get my hands on this dog, and there was no way that I was going to try. As I previously explained, he had a bite history, so I didn't want to give him a bad experience by being forceful and putting my hands on him, and I certainly didn't want to get bitten. So the only thing that I could do with him, or he would allow me to do, was to put on his harness and take it off. And at that time, he was in an easy dog harness, where you have to lift a leg to put it through. And I wanted to minimize any type of contact that I was going to have with him. So I switched him to a T-touch harness that you can actually build around him, and he was much more comfortable with that. We also had a double-ended lead, so we could just guide him a lot better and just help him to rebalance that little bit more. The problem I had was when we got home and I came to take his harness off. As soon as we crossed the threshold, Tag would freeze, he'd lower his head, and he would hold his breath. And he'd be quite happy with, well, I say quite happy, obviously he wasn't. I could then take the harness off, and the second he was free, he would bolt up the stairs, run back down again, and then proceed to either chase lights that was reflecting off the front door, or he would literally stand there and just stare at me. He didn't like the fact that I was going to be leaving him either, so he would literally just stare me out, and it was a hard stare as well. I had to make sure that I didn't make any movements as if I was going to touch him. So even just kind of doing the little things that I was doing with Tag was actually quite difficult for him to cope with, and we'll find out why a little bit later. So Tag, if you actually went to go and let him outside, as you saw in the previous video, he would actually spin, and I noticed that he was only spinning in one direction, and that will be shed light on a little bit later as well. And all his OCD behaviours, or his repetitive behaviours, it was always the right hand turn that he was doing. And also, if we walked Tag or did any form of exercise with Tag that was lasted any longer than about 30 or 40 minutes, we'd know about it in the following days, or poor Faye would know about it in the following days. And it would actually increase his reactive behaviour. So I carried on doing the groundwork, the on-lead groundwork, for probably 4 days. So I was doing twice a week. And after the first week, Faye started to notice some positive changes, although we would think they were quite small. They were huge for Tag. He was becoming more affectionate in the evenings, and for the first time ever, he joined her for on the sofa snuggle. And I was quite pleased that subsequent evenings after that, I was getting the same sort of photo through that Tag actually wanted some contact with Faye. And the only thing she couldn't do is move of any kind, because that would spark a kind of a growl and a reaction from him. But it was becoming a regular occurrence, and Faye was learning quick, and she knew she was starting to realise what she could and couldn't do with Tag, and that she had to be really respectful with that. So after 2 weeks, his regular dog walker started to notice that he was much calmer as well, and there was no noise in the van now. That had changed massively for Tag, and he was more content in the company of other dogs. She had about 5 other dogs on a group walk, but he still had his moments. And his training classes, they noticed that his focus was improving, and they also noticed that his coat was becoming a lot flatter. And at this point, Tag still hadn't initiated contact with me, and I still wasn't going to force it. And I was still ensuring that he was going to be under no pressure at all for that connection to be made. This was all going to be down to him. Things then started to plateau with what I could do with him, and that was about 6 weeks to 2 months. He then started to become very unsettled when he was exposed to things like vacuum cleaner. So Faye thankfully agreed to pop him in the car when she needed to vacuum if it was cold enough to do so, and he wasn't going to get in any distress. It also made a good excuse for her not to vacuum, but that's another webinar. Beginning of April, I then was asked to assist Sarah on a dog detective weekend at Tilly Farm, where I was given the chance to work with Henry and learn about free work, and it blew my mind. It was incredible, and I literally could not wait to get back to try it with Tag, as I was nailed on that this was going to help him. So a little bit of an explanation of free work before I show you how powerful this technique can be. Free work in basic terms is the groundwork that I had started doing with Tag on lead, but off lead with way more surfaces, different heights of stations and platforms and things like that. And the area is set up, so you need a safe environment to set up where possible, so the dog can move freely. We used multiple different surfaces and textures, and we place them on the floor along with some raised platforms, like I said, and these can be in the form of small cardboard boxes, low stools, yoga blocks I use a lot, or you can use those mini horse jump blocks. They're really good. Obviously water, I use 2 water bowls, one at a raised level and one at floor level, so the dog has multiple choices of where they can drink from. And we don't use obstacles initially, because just in case that a dog does have a physical issue, you don't want to exacerbate a problem or cause a dog any discomfort by them having to lift a leg to get over something. We use snuffle mats. We also use things that the dogs can lick, like licky mats, or the infamous bone puzzle feeder that I'm sure you have seen. If not, there will be a photo of one coming up. Surfaces that we use can be anything like rubber mats, carpets, bubble wrap. If you've got 2 bits of carpet, you can actually turn one over because the surface underneath will be different from the texture on the top. So we'd smear wet food or yogurt or squeezy cheese or paste on all the licky things, and we'd actually use treats of various different sizes and textures and shapes, and we place them about the free work. The dog is then brought into the environment, brought into the safe space, and the collar, harness and lead is removed, and the dogs are allowed to move freely. And you can gain so much information by just standing back and watching the dog. Free work slows the movement down, so the observer can see it more clearly. Removing all the wearable equipment from the dog means that they aren't influenced or restricted in any way, and they're certainly not influenced by the handler. It is brilliant for calming busy dogs, as they are encouraged to linger over surfaces and eat a tasty treat or lick some food or sniff through a snuffle mat or ball pit, and it encourages them to relearn calming behaviour. So you're licking, you're chewing and sniffing, which are invaluable, and you can gather data from the dog as it, if it likes or dislikes something. The types of surface that it quite likes to walk over, or the ones that they avoid, varying heights of the stations, which ones they prefer to. You can watch the dog's posture as they interact with those different height stations. You can see what they gravitate towards and what they will return to over again, and that is just the tip of the iceberg with free work. I could talk for hours on it. It's just hugely beneficial. But the information that you gather can then be used to help support your dog long term with behavioural or even physical problems that they might have. So back to Tag. Now I might get a little bit emotional on this video. The first session I had back with him, I set up free work in his house whilst he was out in the back garden. And I wasn't totally prepared for what happened. So I'm just going to play the video. And I don't think you can hear sound on this, but all I will tell you is that I was in tears come the end of it. So yeah, I'm just going to let you watch this. you will see the tension in his lower back and that crazy coat down the right hind. And as he walks about the free work, you will see how uncomfortable he is on his back legs, and just the way he walks. I really did feel for him, and this is just how beautiful free work can be, and how it slows down the movement. I was in complete awe of this dog during this session. He was absolutely amazing. So you can see the different types of surface that I'm using. I've even got a piece of tarpaulin in there. You just see him start to pause and process. And if you can't hear the sound, I was literally saying, this is the first time you're letting me touch you. And he was pretty insistent that we did. Bless him. And you will notice that I didn't touch him in any areas that he didn't offer. I kept my hands very, very slow. Lovely shake off, because that was really difficult for him. And all my movements were slow with him. There was no way I wanted to give him a bad experience, especially as he'd been so trusting and actually initiated it with me. And that's where the love affair started. As anyone who knows me knows how much I absolutely adore this dog. And it continued for quite a while. So I'm not going to lie to you, he completely floored me and I sobbed for quite a while after that. But free work packs a powerful punch, and I was then able to start introducing new people to him, so strangers. So my poor husband got dragged along. We knew men could be a little bit of a touchy subject for tag, but with the help of free work we were actually able to make introductions with him, and he actually could build quite a bond with somebody new just through a few sessions of free work. You'll see some video footage a little bit later where I'm actually in shot, and one of my very good friends who actually occasionally picks up a few of my work with tag when I have to go away, we actually introduce her the same way, and he actually loves her just as much as he loves me when we see each other now, which is really, really nice, and a true testament to free work. So 2 days later, after that first first free work session where he initiated contact with me, his dog walker then reports that he's been really, really calm with other dogs, and for the first time in about a year, he actually allowed her to towel dry him off. And I have to say, from that moment on, Tag was extremely pleased every time he saw me walk through the door, and he knew that he was going to get a free work session, and it was going to make him feel really, really comfortable. So free work was a massive game changer for this dog, and it came at a point where I was at a loss of what to do next, and I really wondered whether I was going to be the right person to help this dog. So we started to see positive changes in Tag. As you can see, I was able to introduce new people, and this has probably happened after about a month, this session you're about to see now. I don't know whether you can hear sound at all, but the back door is open, and at this point Faye's neighbours over the back of her were actually having a conservatory built. So if you remember, I said how Tag was very, very noise sensitive, and he would generally pace, bark, light chase, just run around, tail quite high. In this video, there's a drill going off, there's dogs barking, there's planes going overhead, and this is what free work did for this dog. And you notice how his coat is actually starting to change. Remember how bushy that right hind was? That's not grooming, although Faye did have to trim his feathers on the backs of his legs. The noise that was going on in the background outside was actually quite a lot. And you can see something just spooked him, and that was quite a normal reaction for him. And then he comes back and he actually decides to self-calm and decompress in his ball pit. And for this dog to kind of come back and decompress and self-settle and self-calm, and to carry on doing his free work was huge, absolutely huge. You'll see the tail slowly start to drop as he starts to calm. And he has to hop out with both back feet. He can't do one and then the other. So each free work session that I did with Tag kind of ended in the same kind of results, which was complete relaxation for him. Faye will probably tell you that her WhatsApp feed was full of pretty much photos like this of her dog. And for me to see Tag in a state of relaxation after I've spent many months with him, just seeing how tense he was and how uncomfortable he was, this was amazing. This was absolutely amazing. And I've got many pieces of video footage where he will actually be asleep like this or in this position whilst the back door's open and there's a lot of noise going on out, and he doesn't flinch. He might pick his head up and have a look, but then he rests his head back down and he carries on resting. So I could tell that free work was changing things physically for him as well. So the more free work that I did with him, the more it became apparent that he was in quite a lot of discomfort. And I made some suggestions to Faye about how she can improve things in the home in order to help him a little bit more. So Faye bought quite a lot of large rugs and runners. She spared no expense. to cover the laminate so that Tag had more, he was able to move more comfortably around the house, and he had a firmer footing underneath him. We raised his food and water bowls, and we also changed his bed. So as you can see, he had one of those plastic hard round beds, and that was forcing him into quite an unnatural posture when he was asleep. So to give him the opportunity to stretch out if he wanted to, because from the free work and for him relaxing at the end, I noticed he actually liked to sleep quite straight and quite kind of, not quite outstretched, but very flat and very straight. We switched that for just a lovely pile of blankets, and we turned his bed into a ball pit, as you can see, and on from the last video. And we started to gather data, and we started to find the things that were very, very meaningful to him, and those things that he could decompress on times of stress. But I still was quite concerned about his movement, and I wanted a second opinion, because I'm one of these people that think, did I see that? Am I right? Am I going crazy? Am I going absolutely mad? So before I was going to urge Faye to take him to a vet, I took Tag to see Sarah. So we had a lovely session at Tilly Farm with Sarah, and we discussed lots of things, and he did display some shadow chasing and some light chasing whilst he was there, which helped me brilliantly, that she could see some of the behaviours that Tag was displaying. And we discussed about how OCD behaviours can actually potentially be linked to pain. So she was also in agreement with me that there was something going on with his hind end, and that we should advise Faye to move forward and ask for a vet check, which is what I did. So when I got back, I asked Faye to take him to check his hind assembly in both legs, plus lumbosacral, and to ask for a pain relief initially for about 6 weeks, just to see if that changed anything before putting Tag through any stress of x-rays and things like that. And Faye probably thought I was absolutely barking mad at this point, but bless her, she humoured me, and she arranged to go for an appointment to actually get him checked out. So the vet agreed thoroughly that there was something going on, and she agreed for a pain relief trial, which was carried out for 6 weeks. He was placed on Metacam, and we noticed some quite big changes in Tag. His overall reaction to shadows and lights became much less. He became calmer in general, and his recovery time after reacting to things quickened. It was already getting much shorter from the free work, but the pain relief actually kind of stepped up a little bit for him. I continued to use free work with him twice a week, and slowly he started to ask for more contact, and he wasn't happy with anyone touching his hind end. And as you can see from these photos, the reason why is that the vet confirmed when Faye took him back and we asked for x-ray that Tag actually had quite bad hip dysplasia. And this kind of explains everything. It explains his touch sensitivity, it explains his reactions to noises, because they typically go hand in hand in my experience. And it explains why he wasn't happy about other dogs in a group. So he was worried that he was going to get knocked into and it would cause him pain. His joints, his hips were unstable, and even the slightest bit of movement, even a stroke, even a slight little tickle, that was causing a bit of a wave as it went down his body, and it was actually causing him pain. So Tag was then doing the only thing he could do, which was to tell people to keep away and growling and barking. So we now had pennies starting to drop as to what had been going on for Tag right from the word go, right from puppyhood, right from the developmental stages of his life, basically. So you can understand now how and why he was so reactive. And bless him, he was in pain, and it was the only way he was trying to tell people that he wasn't coping. But individuals, everyone reacts to pain in different ways. I've seen dogs with severe arthritis that are the most laid back, but I've also seen dogs that have very, very small arthritic changes in their joints, and they can be reactive, or they can be in quite a lot of pain. So every dog is different, and they should be treated as individuals, and no one can say for sure how much pain a dog is in. So yes, so this now explains exactly why Tag behaved the way he did. So we agreed that he needed surgical intervention, and he was referred to Langford Veterinary Hospital in Bristol for assessment. And I carried on as usual with him, and it was agreed that because Tag needed consistency, and he needed to be kind of monitored over his walks, that I would actually now take him on full-time Monday to Friday whilst Faye was at work, and that the other dog walker would just relinquish walking him, because obviously we needed to monitor the length of walks that he could cope with. So it wasn't fair on the other dogs, and obviously the dog walker had a duty of care to the dogs that she walked, that they didn't come to any harm, because Tag's behaviour was intermittently spiking as well. You will notice from these slides that Tag's coat was ever changing. Like I said previously, he would change his coat daily, weekly, and I've got so many photos of his right hind, just to kind of catalogue what kind of changes he was going through, and to prepare him for his impending operation, because it was deemed that he needed 2 total hip replacements. We started muzzle training him. We knew that Tag was going to have to be handled by multiple people, multiple strangers. We had to make sure that they were safe, and we had to make sure that he was safe as well. Not only that, is that we knew how sensitive Tag was to pain and to touch. And to keep Faye safe after the operation, we thought it prudent to muzzle train Tag in order to lessen the possibility of a bite, because obviously Faye was going to have to get hands-on with Tag in order to help him. So we started muzzle training him, like I said. We set up the dog pen in her sitting room, and we actually started to include this in free work sessions. So we brought the familiar to the unfamiliar. So he was started to get accustomed to it, and I think that the dog pen was in Faye's living room for probably a good month before he actually went to have his first operation. Tag's reactions would continue to change, and due to the data that we gather from the free work, Faye and I started using what he found most meaningful for him. The ball pit became a permanent feature in poor Faye's sitting room, and after having some one-to-ones, she was using it to help him to decompress and redirect his attention from most triggers around the home. And Tag would choose to go to this rather than to react at most times. Faye was also able to use Chirag Patel's counting game in order to help with resource guarding as well. That became a huge factor for her, because he was resource guarding post and all sorts of clothes. At one point he actually presented me with a bra one day when I walked in, which was quite interesting. I have no idea where he got that from. So using the counting game was a useful tool in order to retrieve items that we didn't want Tag to have. I would have a snuffle mat or a toy or something that he could lick waiting for him in the hallway, so that when I walked in from taking him for a walk, he had a way of decompressing and a way of self-calming when I removed that harness. And because of that, we actually managed to stop him from running up the stairs. I don't think he does it at all now. I'd have to check with Faye, but certainly for me, he wasn't running upstairs and light chasing in the hallway anymore. So the Metacam then started to lose its effect. And there was one particular incident after playing with some toys at home that Tag landed awkwardly when catching a toy, and within 24 hours he actually ended up nibbling all the fur off his foot. So this, to me, my experience, is a sign that there was some sort of nerve impingement, or he tweaked something, a little bit like how you would get if you got sciatica, and you get that tingly feeling down your leg or in your extremities. And basically Tag had a funny feeling in his foot, and the only way he felt he could relieve that was to start to nibble at his paw. And it was at that point I suggested that Tag went back and rediscussed pain meds with his local vet whilst we were waiting for a date for his operation to come through. And the vet agreed completely, and we put him on gabapentin, which is quite a good nerve-related pain blocker. Doesn't block it completely, but it just helps with nerve-related pain, which was quite nice. And we noticed Tag settle again with that. So then Tag went and had his first hip replacement, and recovery was hard, really, really hard for both Faye and Tag. I don't think Faye realised how hard it was going to be until she was in the midst of it, and Tag really did not take to being confined very well. I think he kept her up most nights, whining and barking. And he'd actually bitten her whilst she was trying to attend to him at one point, and where we neglected to put the muzzle on, but it was a mistake. We learned from that mistake, and we ensured that the muzzle was kept on and his collar was kept on. And recovery was quite slow to start off with. He obviously was experiencing different sensations, as he actually tried to pull chunks of fur from out of his tail. So we don't know whether he had some weird kind of like numbness feeling, or it just generally didn't feel very nice back there for him. But then it started to calm down. This is Tag, bless him, with his cone of shame. And he wasn't a happy chap. He sat in there. I think that's the first photo I took of him after he had his operation. And then you can see that we had to support him with a sling and his back end, just to ensure that the implant that had been put in there didn't become dislodged in the first week until it cements in. And we made sure that he had a platform that he could drink and eat his food off of as well. I laid down a proprioceptive track, so those surfaces that you saw me using in free work, I actually laid those down in the hallway as our route out, so he was actually getting a little bit of sensory input in his back paws as he was going out to have a toilet break. For the first 6 weeks he was only allowed 5 minutes 3 times a day, so I was doing the middle slot during the day whilst Faye was at work. So once Tag was given the all clear and walks were up to 35 minutes, I was able to start doing some long line free work with him. And I decided to do this out on the green, which is kind of just around the corner from Faye's house. Now this was the green that you saw him chasing like a fly at the very beginning. It's a very big source of stimulus for Tag. There's rabbits that go out there, there's other dogs, there's lots of birds, the marina's just the other side of the hedge. So I thought it would be quite nice to do some long line free work. So this would be the second stage of free work. So if you wanted to take the dog outside and start to do this in open spaces, or if you didn't have a safe space to do free work then you can actually use a long line to make it safe for the dog. So this was huge for Tag. So he just had, well, he was obviously about 7 or 8 weeks post-op, so he was allowed to do a little bit more movement, and this was a day where it was blowing a hoolie, so it potentially could have been a huge trigger for him. And you will see my hair blowing around all over the place, and Tags, and the trees blowing in the background. And movement from trees used to be a huge trigger. And although his tail does come up occasionally, you will see it drop. My mistake there is I thought he wanted a little bit of contact, but he was actually seeing if I had any squeezy cheese. And Tag remains calm. He's an incredible dog. So with him now having one good hit, I was able to introduce some friends to him. You will see that he is wearing a muzzle in most of these photos, and that was just precautionary, because we started to realise that after, again, 30 or 40 minutes, he was actually now struggling with the other hip. So we took that as a cue that we needed to bring his second operation forward. But with regards to reintroducing him to other dogs, I started off with one, so the little blonde rescue that you can see with the purple harness on the left and in the top middle. That's Jessie. She's actually another client's dog, and she is absolutely brilliant. She just goes with whatever the other dog that she's with wants to do. She's not very in your face at all, in fact. And if the other dog just wants to go and sniff, that's what she's happy to do. She doesn't put any pressure on the other dog to go and play. So she was an ideal dog to kind of start to reintroduce Tag into, and we actually did reintroduce Tag to another dog with free work. And he's now got multiple friends. So he's now got a trail hound that is one of his friends. He's got another little Vizsla type rescue. The only photo I didn't get was of a soft coated Wheaten Terrier who he's also friends with, Woody. So his friendship circle was growing, but I made sure that I put dogs that weren't going to and there's no chance of him being knocked, and there's no chance of them kind of displaying behaviour towards him that he would find a little bit intimidating, or felt that he would need to tell them to back off. So the walks were now a lot calmer in general. So this is was down at a place called the Lower Lode in Tewkesbury, and again it's a source of quite large stimulus for Tag. There's swans, there's ducks, there's birds, there's rabbits, there's other dog walkers, there's people. So this was how walks were now starting to be with Tag, even though he was having spikes every now and then with more reactive behaviour, generally 80% of the time. And you can see he's got 2 black patches on his back. He got a little bit obsessed with licking, so that those 2 parts actually ended up taking longer to grow back. And you notice some birds flying across in the background there. So this was what we were starting to get with Tag. And you can see how stiff that left hind still is, how painful it still looks for him. And he comes to check in now, which was really lovely, because he never used to do that before. And you can see there on his left hip where he's got some fur that has got stuck whilst it's shedding. And to me, that's an indication of things that are going on underneath the surface, tension patterns, things that aren't quite right with that hind. It could have just been muscle, but we knew that he had hip dysplasia of that left hind as well. So I was able to introduce him to more stimulating walks, and he was doing really well, brilliantly in fact. but the time came that we had to move forward, and we had to bring his second operation forward. I think we brought it forward by probably about a month, 2 months, I can't remember. Check with Faye at the end. And this kind of brings us up to where we are now with Tag. Mid-February this year, I think it was the 11th or 12th, he went and had his second hip operation, so he's now the bionic dog, and he is now 7 weeks post-op, and we are already seeing some really, really encouraging signs with Tag. So this is the lovely Faye with her gorgeous dog Tag, and this is quite a lovely photo, because the text that came with this when she shared this on Instagram and Facebook was 4 weeks post-op, and I finally get a proper cuddle from my dog. It was hard work, but she got there with him. Sorry. But he's got a long way to go. Learned behaviour that he's got, which is habitual, which is ingrained in him, doesn't disappear overnight. But Faye and I know now how to actually manage him better. And now hopefully he's going to be pain-free. He's going to be making leaps and bounds with this. You know, he's absolutely incredible, this dog. He's done a lot for me. Whew. Told you I was emotionally attached to this dog. So yeah, and that's where we are now, and we're now in lockdown, so I can't see my baby boy. And Faye is cruelly going to be moving to Reading. She's going to be moving 2 hours away from me, so I'm now not going to be able to see Mr. Moo for as much as I used to. So yeah, we'll try and keep kind of regular updates on my Facebook page and on Ace and things like that. But Tag has got his whole future ahead of him, and hopefully he's now going to be pain-free, and he's just going to be improving day on day. And that's kind of the end of my little bit. And I'm sorry to cry at the end. Whew. Janet, do we have any questions at all?
That was really lovely. The only question was about food so far, but there's probably other questions. And if people want to ask a question, if they just want to unmute themselves, and indeed you can have video too, if you feel like it. You don't. I haven't got my video on, but I could do. But yeah, the question was was from that first free work, and I kind of answered it a little bit, but about whether there was food on the surfaces when you were doing the free work.
There were, but that when I was filming that bit, because that was the second video, he was going around kind of clearing up, so he was on his second route round. So you notice he actually did stop and lick a few bits. So they were minuscule when I first started off with him, because obviously we didn't know whether food was a trigger for his reactivity as well. Incidentally, we did actually change Tag's food. He was actually being fed dry to start off with, and where reactivity or kind of like anxious behaviours are concerned, I do advise my clients actually put their dogs onto a more species appropriate diet. So we moved him onto a wet food. I think he's on 4th leg now, which is really suiting Tag really well, a lot better than the other food he was on. He was quite fussy with the kibble, and he now absolutely loves his food. So yeah.
Brilliant. Does anybody have any other questions? There's lots of comments. Yeah, so lots of comments about how wonderful story. Thanks for sharing. Well done, Jem. Thanks for sharing. Very touching. Hang on, they're all. You should be able to see the chat. Can you see the chat?
No, I can't.
No, okay. Do you want to unshare your? No, don't unshare your screen, because you can see Tag, and it's nice to see Tag. Okay, so I'll read some of the questions then. Lisa from Lisa. You had a wonderful guardian to work with. I wonder how to describe this to clients who may be skeptical or baffled.
What, describing free work? So generally, so I liken free work to Tai Chi or yoga, with a little bit of sensory play for kids kind of mixed in. You can use it as a tool when you're first introducing it to your clients, that you're giving the dog something to do whilst you have a chat with them, and it allows the dog to kind of get to know you at a distance whilst kind of doing something quite engaging. That's normally how I start off with introducing free work to clients. And then you can start to kind of point things out to them, like, oh, did you notice that he avoided that surface, or did you notice that he preferred to actually take the treat from the higher level? And then you can kind of slip it in that way. You can be a little bit crafty about it. I actually use it as part of my canine massage treatments. So those that come to me in a clinic environment, I actually have free work set up at one end, I have a mat at the other end, and I actually use it as a way for the dogs to go off and decompress. Obviously I only use stuff to smear like small amounts on surfaces and things like that, because in massage, you don't want the dogs having a lot in their stomach, the bare minimum basically. But it's just lovely for the dogs to, because I sit at one end on a mat, the dogs can come to me and they know that if they're on the mat, my hands go on. The second they step off the mat and they go and decompress, I don't chase them around the room. So it's also a really, really lovely way to build confidence and that connection with the dog when you're doing treatments as well.
Fab. And let's see the next one from Amy. Amazing presentation, crying a little, so Mike. But did you find his ears leveled out?
Yes, actually, yes, we do. There are, so his ears are a tell, like a poker tell for me as to how tense he is, and they will actually get more unlevel on a walk, depending how overstimulated he actually is. But generally, his ears have leveled up. I don't know if you guys can see him. The face just started showing Tag, a video of Tag. I think he's live in her living room.
Oh, hang on. Oh, yes, there.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you come, if people come out and go into gallery view, then they can see Faye's thing with Tag.
So you can actually see his ears are level there. Guys, what was that? Faye?
In fact, what I'm going to do, Gemma, is I'm just going to stop your sharing of the screen.
Yeah.
If I can, hang on. There must be a way to do it.
He picked his head up, so I was just trying to show that his ears are looking quite level tonight.
Yeah, you can see from behind actually his ears are looking quite level.
As you can see,
I've been crying, so I've got really nice. Oh, look at my boy.
I think you have to stop sharing. So, but you can.
So I can stop share. I can stop sharing.
Then
we could see Faye would be bigger then. I think, yeah.
You got.
Yeah, so if people are looking in gallery view, you'll see.
You've got a live view of my object of my obsession. This dog has been an obsession for, I think it's been 2 years I've been working with him now. Has to be, I think, Faye, the end of February. So yeah, we've just crossed a 2-year period.
Oh, bless him, look at him. Okay.
So Gemma had me, just for everyone, Gemma said to me this week, rate all your walks with him. He's just gone to 10-minute walks 3 times a day. Don't tell Boris Johnson I'm breaking the rules. It's in his medical interest. So she said rate him as a 0 for absolute twat on the and 10 for normal dog. So he's off the Metacam. He was having between 6 and 8 gabapentin a day, and he's been having 4. And I think the lowest I've scored him all week is an 8. And that has been because other dogs have started on him and he's reacted to it, rather than him going out and being super tense. And when he has got upset, he's calmed down again really, really quickly, and we've walked home really calmly. Whereas before, when something triggered him, he would drag me home and be diving into every bush we went past, and it was painful and stressful and just horrible, basically. So,
and he might always have moments like that, because that behaviour for him is completely ingrained.
Yes.
You know, he's done it for 4 years of his life, so it's going to take time. But we now know ways of helping him with that, which is, you know, and Ace is sort of forefront of that for me.
But yeah, this week, even today, a dog barked at him from across the road. Tag was oblivious to the dog until it barked at him and growled at him, and he barked back, and I went, "It's okay, let's just carry on our walk," and calmed straight down, and off we went like nothing had ever happened, which was an amazing achievement for him.
Beautiful. He's a brilliant dog.
A few more comments, questions. Do you want?
Yeah.
So Helen, amazing. It's been so interesting. Thank you so much for sharing Tag's story. I agree with that. Tracy, just to say, Gemma has been working with my dog Bradstock for about 12 months. He has OCD and has hip issues, but ACE work has been amazing. Bradstock found touch really difficult, but now allows Gem to work with him fully. He gives Gem cuddles and I think he actually loves her more than me. And
I was going to say he's only human, but he's only canine.
He's only canine. Anne-Marie, all dogs love Gem more than us. I don't think there's any more questions, but yeah, I think there's lots of very positive comments, and I just want to apologize to Lucy, because I suspect, Lucy, that we just changed our clocks yesterday. So
we've gone forward, haven't we?
Our clocks went forward yesterday, so that's probably where it's recorded. So yeah, so it's recorded. So there may well be, there may well be others who are coming in now. But yes, it's recorded. So anybody who wants recording, I will just make sure it's all sorted and get it to Gem, and she can do what she wants with it. Yeah. Any other questions for Gemma? It was a really, really lovely presentation.
Or Faye.
Or Faye, indeed. Or Faye. Or Tag.
Yeah, Tag can answer his own questions, bless him. Question for Faye, I think, from Tracy.
Question for Faye.
I turn my video on and be polite instead of hiding.
Hello.
Hi.
Do you want to? Where is Tracy? Do you want to unmute yourself, Tracy, and ask? Oh, what are you going to do without Gem all the time? Is the question.
Yeah, we'd all like to know that.
Call her every day. Even through the lockdown, I'm sending Gem videos and text messages every day to let her know how we're getting on. That's not going to stop. We'll be working out a way for her to still see him and do some work with him. I've
got visitation rights, I think.
I'm actually moving to the town that Gemma was born in and grew up in, so I'm trying to convince her to move back so I can take her with me. So no, we will still be using Gem's expertise. She's been fantastic, and I had come a long way with him, with his resource guarding and with some of his behaviour, but I was at a loss as to where to go next. So I owe a lot to Gem.
Thank you. I owe a lot to you and Tag. So,
and I still owe you lunch in the pub.
You do.
We've got more questions. Are you okay to carry on for a little bit?
Yeah. I can go with it.
Yeah. So Lisa, it calms down busy dogs, but I would expect some of them to race around looking for food, ?
Okay, see, initially they do. So Sarah Fisher describes it beautifully. So that when you see like a busy dog come in, first of all, they kind of go around getting the headline news. And they'll go around kind of picking up the bits that they can see initially, and then they start to slow down, and then they start to kind of read between the lines, and they start reading the small print, and you do start to see them slow down. Generally, I found that the first kind of free work sessions would last about 30 minutes, and then they would actually start to kind of shorten down to about 20-15 minutes, and pretty much within the first 5 minutes you will see a really busy dog just calm down. Well, that's my experience anyway. I think because Tracy's on here, Tracy's Bradstock, he's an English Springer Spaniel, and he is a very busy dog, but watching him do free work, after 2 minutes he is very steady, very measured, with where he places his feet, and he just calms down beautifully. So try it. Honestly, it will blow your mind.
And one from Elaine, and I think this will have to be the last one. Does small hopping at the back end always indicate there may be pain or something wrong?
No, not always. It depends on the dog. But as Sarah says, you can put a question mark above that and you can gather more data. But if you are concerned, go to your vet, take your dogs to the vet and ask for a thorough check over. There's no harm in you doing that, but yeah, it's just down to you to be a bit of a dog detective, as Sarah says, and gather data and start to kind of piece the puzzle together about what's going on for your dog.
Okay, we'll slip one last one in.
Okay.
Was Tag more open to body work throughout his journey?
Oh, my days. So now, I think Faye will tell you that since he's had his second hip replacement, he actually allows gentle touch over his back end. So after the first hip replacement, he allowed, we did T-touch bodywork with him, and I could literally get up to about the point where his last rib is before I would stop and go no further, because you can literally just see him start to tense up. But funnily enough, he would actually allow Faye to actually kind of scruffle quite hard around the base of his tail and really scratch his bum. But light touch was obviously a real problem for him, and probably hurt him more, and probably he probably had kind of like some sensitivity or sensation issues around there. But now he's had that second hip done. Even the vet picked up at Langford that you are actually able to stroke his hind ends now calmly and mindfully without him having a reaction to it. So yeah, bodywork did feature in Tag's story, but obviously I was more hands off with him because I knew there was something going on, and I didn't want to push my luck with him. Oh, there he is.
And there he is, bless him. You can really see the difference in the ears.
Yeah, totally. And that right ear now is quite mobile.
Yeah.
How it used to be.
Brilliant.
Bless him.
Well, thank you everybody for coming. Apologies to those who came late. I think that's the time difference from the clocks going forward. But it has been recorded, assuming Zoom has behaved, which it looks like it has. So we will get it out there to everybody. Okay, and Gemma, thank you. That was just brilliant.
No, thank you. And thanks
fabulous
for tuning in.
Okay, thank you everybody. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.